Extremely talented group, great size, great experience. Got a few of their kids playing at a really, really high level. Jordan, been one of the best players in our league for a number of years now. And then bringing Nia Russell over, who we really struggled with to guard at Kentucky in the past, bring some veterans in into Shields, Pose, as good a stretch four as we have. And then, they go find Okot. Gives them, I mean, I look at their bench, they've got 4 or 5 kids sitting over there, 6'5" or better. So a lot of challenges for us. Really more anxious to see how we respond to how we played against Florida, and see if there's some evidence of improvement on our side.
All right, Dudley.
Obviously, Izzy's game was unreal, but talk a little bit about how maybe some of the other players are, it's helping her get open a little bit more, it looks like to me.
Yeah. When you're the top of the scout, and I've got friends on all these staffs, and they talk about how they prepare for it. They always have this game plan that it's going to be to slow her down, and what they are going to be able to give up. I think Izzy's really matured in her decision making. It's a real fine line, Dudley, to walk between making the right basketball play and making the right basketball play for us. I've got a lot of old coaching friends who I trust that come to watch games, and they will critique in a positive way, critiques that I ask for. And they'll say, well, I thought maybe she should have passed that one. But we have players sometimes that don't want to shoot that kick out shot. So Izzy takes a shot that appears to be tough or forced or whatever. And that's by no means the case. So I think what we've gotten is our kids have learned to play with her. She's learned to play with them in a very short period of time, in knowing what's the right basketball play for us. So your point is really, it's obvious you watched a lot of basketball because you've seen it, because there is an art to doing, for her to even be able to get 25 shots against the team's desire to not let her shoot it. That's real a testament to what our team's doing. Like what Chris does. Like a lot of people will say, well, Chris doesn't give you much offensively. And I say, well, then you don't know much about basketball. She catches it and she moves it immediately. The ball never stalls with Chris. They say, well, they don't score much. That's okay, because they're spacing the floor, or they're cutting at the right times. When KJ cuts, she takes 2 cutters with her. And that allows a driving lane for Izzy to open up. When Chris cuts, she's on a rocket going through there, which occupies the help. So it's taken some time. We're still not anywhere close to being there. It would help, obviously, if we made some more shots when she did kick it out. I think she kicked it out 16 times the other night. We made 2. So we've still got areas of improvement, but we just keep on them to keep making the right basketball play. I had a couple of kids got reluctant to shoot it the other night, and they said, well, I'd missed my first whatever. And I'm like, it does not matter. It is imperative that you shoot that shot because you were open. They're not guarding you for a reason. You have to take that shot. That's the right basketball play. So I think it's helped us, mature as a team offensively. We're still nowhere near a finished product, but for her to get to the foul line the times that she has, for her to find just shots, much less quality shots against teams, set playing. I've coached Plum, I've coached Dungy, we've had Ramirez, we've had some really Gary McKnight, really good players, and those kids were always top of the scout, no doubt. But there was always a secondary plan. Right now, I think most teams are saying we're not going to let Izzy see the rim, and she's still finding a way to get there. So, did that address your question or
Yeah,
not?
yeah.
Okay.
And I guess I marvel at her ability to practice once a week and still go out there and be able to play with all the injuries. For all she's done on the court, is that even more of a respect level for her?
Yeah, and I think teammates can look at that one of two ways. I've had players in the past that were limited in practice by me or by their athletic injuries, their athletic training issues, the limit restrictions. whoever it was, and it caused resentment. That's not been the case here because I think Izzy earned that, and how hard she does work when she's in there, and that she doesn't need a lot of reps to retain. I think it's a great example for our kids to see that you can do it that way. I don't want them to do it when their bodies are feeling good, but I can tell you this: there's not one person in our orbit over here that thinks Izzy's not playing through pain. They know. They don't think she's faking an injury. They don't think she's fabricating an injury. They don't think she's milking an injury. And that happens in today's society. There's not one person that gives any ounce of credence to that because they see how hard she works. They see she's in the training room all the time. They'll come in and get taped and she's there. They'll come back and get something else and she's still in there. So it's easy to see the difference. You can't fool kids. You can't fool dogs, as my papa used to always say. So our kids see it. They know she's doing all the work. Yeah, I said it the other day. We went to shoot around and she went to class in between. Never had many kids do that because they have an out. They could not have to go. I mean, because it's a game day, they could get an excused absence, but this is a careers class, and she's thinking about her career after basketball. So we drove her to class. That was a first.
Yeah,
that was a first for me. I was like, what do you mean you ride to class? We just got through with shoot around. Aren't you going to go take a nap or, no, coach, I got class. Oh, okay. Well, let me drive you up there. So.
Thanks.
Yep.
Daniel?
Yeah, hi, Coach. I was just wondering, there's this, I guess, the video that you put out on YouTube every once in a while, the defensive scoring system. I guess, how did that kind of come about? And is that formula that you had in there? Is that the one you're using right now for this team?
Yeah, it's one that Coach Todd got from a coach he used to work with back in the day. We've used it a variety of times. I think probably most coaches have some variety of that, to reward your defense. This kind of goes to the question you asked me at the end of the press conference the other day that I have a good answer. Your question spawned me to write down some things. And one of the things that we did was we wrote down what goes into a defensive stop, kind of like an anatomy of a defensive stop. And all those things are in that drill or what you reward. The things that we try to put positive numbers onto are within that drill. But it just shows you've got to do a whole bunch of things right a number of times in the SEC to get a defensive stop. And it got us into a big philosophical talk about how our sport's different than a lot of other sports. You got to be able to do both ends. We don't substitute between plays and put a defensive team in and then for an offensive team. We don't, there's not a net separating us like there are in other sports. You have to be able to transition quickly between the two. You have to perform both skills. So we brought it to our kids. We're going to bring it to our kids' attention today. It'll be our first time practicing, but there is a lot of stuff that goes into a successful defensive stop and then on the other side, a successful offensive possession. And it takes some time. And we've got so many kids that are new. When coaches say our team's young, we say that in press conferences all the time. I know I have. But then we don't elaborate on what that means. When you're a young team, it means you haven't practiced all of those things enough. Like we talk about guarding ball screens, and there's different ways to guard ball screens. When you're a young team, you haven't practiced them enough. You just haven't had the time. We've only got 20 hours a week, and everything that's entailed with that, you can't work on all of the things you have to do on that sheet we wrote down enough to be able to stop a really good team in the SEC. So it kind of made me probably back off a little bit and give my kids a little bit more grace and put a little bit more pressure on us as coaches to make sure we're teaching the top things. We're going to take care of these top 5 things and not worry about 25 through 30. So that's about how many there are. About 30 things you have to do right to get a stop in the SEC on defense. So we're just going to focus on those top 5, and when we get 5, we'll go to number 6. So I appreciate your question because it's made us better. It made us prep better. And hopefully it'll carry over to practice. We're going to be good. We're going to try to be better at those top 5 things that are the most important.
And then I guess you've got 7 games left in the SEC slate, if I can count properly. I guess given how young your team is, are you kind of pitching it as, this improvement will carry over beyond those 7 games and
Yeah.
in the next season, kind of almost like the 2 seasons combined into one, rather than maybe, there's 7 games left in the season?
Correct. Yeah, we are looking at that. Your chances for postseason, you start to run out of games. So I think you have to do that. It's not something I've done in the past because the past didn't dictate that. But the way things work now, obviously we'll get through to whenever we have to, back in the day, we'd say turn your uniforms in. Then you navigate the transfer portal and you start looking for the future team. We will and have already started doing some of that. There is a rule in place that says we can continue to practice as long as the NCAA tournament is going on. I've never done that before. Never, ever, ever. Like once we lost our quote last game, that's when we started our break. There's a rule that says you can continue to practice if you get beat out because other teams have the opportunity just because you beat out. I'm not telling you we're going to do it, but we might with our kids that will be retained. So we haven't put anything into writing. We haven't put anything into action, but have we talked about it? Yeah, we have and will. As we continue to go down, I still think there's a lot to play for. We have a strong desire. Our kids did not want, when the polls came out and we were picked last, one of the things they said is they don't want to finish last. So we're still trying to play and win every game we can and get as close up. All you got to do is look at the rankings and see what the difference 1 or 2 wins can do for you. We're going to play it out as they show up, but I can promise you, and this has been the case for us ever since we've been, and we're not focused on results. We never have been, but we do live in a reality world enough to talk about it. And so, yeah, we've talked about it. We've got a plan to pivot whenever the time comes. We're just not quite there yet, but we have talked about it.